Before we step into this sacred moment together, I invite you to subscribe to our channel and join a community that seeks to witness the profound beauty of faith across the world. Your subscription helps us continue bringing these stories of hope and devotion to light. Now, let us enter the heart of Jerusalem on this extraordinary night. The evening air in Jerusalem carries a weight that cannot be measured, only felt. It is October, and the sky above the old city has deepened into a velvet indigo, scattered with stars that have watched over this ancient landscape for millennia. The narrow stone alleyways of the Jewish quarter are beginning to empty of daytime pilgrims and merchants, their footsteps fading into memory as a different kind of gathering takes shape. Tonight, something extraordinary is happening at the Western Wall, the Kotel, that great limestone sentinel that has stood witness to joy and sorrow, prayer and silence, for nearly 2,000 years. Tonight, as lanterns blaze against the sacred stones, crowds are kneeling in vigil, their collective breath rising like incense toward heaven. You approach through the winding passageways, each turn revealing another layer of history pressed into the very stones beneath your feet. The walls on either side lean close, their surfaces worn smooth by countless hands trailing along them through the centuries. Limestone blocks, cream and gold in daylight, now glow amber in the light of oil lamps hung at intervals along the route. The smell of the city at dusk mingles with something older, stone dust, olive oil, the faint trace of frankincense drifting from a nearby courtyard. Your footsteps echo, a soft percussion against cobblestones that have known Roman sandals, Crusader boots, Ottoman slippers and the bare feet of countless seekers. As you descend the final slope and the plaza opens before you, the breath catches in your throat. The Western Wall rises ahead, monumental and serene, its massive hewn stones stacked with such precision that even time has struggled to shift them. But it is not the wall alone that arrests you, it is the light. Hundreds of lanterns have been lit and placed along the plaza, their flames dancing in the evening breeze that sweeps down from the Temple Mount above. The light flickers across the limestone, making the ancient surface seem almost alive, breathing with the prayers of generations. The wall glows with an inner warmth, as if the stone itself remembers every whispered petition, every tear shed against its surface, every moment of transcendent connection between the human and the divine. And there, in that great open space before the wall, the crowds are kneeling. Men and women, separated by custom into their respective sections, have lowered themselves onto the stone plaza, some with prayer shawls draped over their shoulders, others with heads bowed and hands pressed together or raised upward. The sight is deeply moving. This collective act of humility and yearning, this physical manifestation of souls reaching toward something greater than themselves. The lanterns blaze around them, creating pools of golden light that seem to hold each person in a tender embrace. You move closer, careful and reverent, aware that you are entering a space charged with holiness. The murmur of prayer begins to reach your ears, not loud but constant, like the susurration of waves against a shore. Hebrew syllables rise and fall in ancient rhythms, some voices strong and clear, others barely audible, trembling with emotion. There are psalms being recited, passages from scripture that have been spoken in this place for millennia, words that have outlived empires and survived exiles. The prayers overlap and interweave, creating a tapestry of sound that feels at once intensely personal and profoundly communal. The Western Wall, called the Kotel in Hebrew meaning simply the wall, is all that remains visible of the retaining wall that once surrounded the Second Temple complex, destroyed by Roman forces in 70 CE. For Jewish people across the world, it represents the closest accessible point to the Holy of Holies, the inner sanctum where, in ancient times, the presence of God was believed to dwell most intensely on earth. To stand before it, to touch its stones, to pray in its shadow is to connect with the unbroken thread of faith that stretches back through countless generations. The Kotel is not merely a remnant of architecture. It is a living symbol of endurance, of memory, of hope that has refused to die despite every attempt to extinguish it. But the sanctity of this place extends beyond any single tradition. Jerusalem itself holds sacred significance for the three great Abrahamic faiths. The Old City contains the Western Wall, the Church of the Holy Sepulchre where Christian tradition holds that Jesus was crucified and resurrected, and the Temple Mount, known as Haram al-Sharif in Islamic tradition, where the Dome of the Rock and Al-Aqsa Mosque stand in golden splendor. This convergence of faith makes Jerusalem a spiritual epicenter, a place where heaven and earth seem to touch, where the prayers of billions across history have been directed. Tonight's vigil is a moment within this vast continuum. The people kneeling in the plaza have come for reasons as varied as the stars above. Some seeking healing, others offering gratitude, still others mourning losses too deep for ordinary words. A woman near you rocks gently as she prays, her lips moving soundlessly, her eyes closed. Tears trace paths down her cheeks, catching the lantern light. A few meters away, a young man sits utterly still, his prayer book open in his hands, his gaze fixed on the wall as if he might see through the stone to something beyond. An elderly couple kneel side by side, their fingers interlaced, their prayers synchronized after decades of shared life and faith. The lanterns themselves add to the sacredness of the moment. Fire has always been a symbol of the divine, the burning bush that spoke to Moses, the pillar of fire that guided the Israelites through the wilderness, the eternal flame that once burned in the temple. These flames tonight, though humble in origin, carry that same symbolic weight. They represent light in darkness, hope in difficulty, the persistence of the Spirit against all that would diminish it. As the breeze moves across the plaza, the flames bend and straighten, creating patterns of light and shadow that play across the kneeling figures and the ancient stones alike. You find a place at the edge of the gathering and lower yourself to the stone. The plaza surface is cool beneath your knees, solid and unyielding, a reminder of the earthly reality that grounds all spiritual seeking. From this position, the wall seems even more imposing, its lower courses of massive Herodian stones reaching up into the night. These lowest blocks, some weighing hundreds of tons, were quarried and placed more than 2,000 years ago, fitted together with such skill that no mortar was needed. Above them, smaller stones from various periods of reconstruction create a layered history written in limestone. Byzantine additions, Arab era repairs, Ottoman renovations, each generation adding its contribution to the preservation of this sacred site. The crevices between the stones are filled with thousands of small paper notes, prayers written by hand and tucked into every available gap. This practice, leaving written petitions at the wall, has become a profound tradition. People come from across the globe to place their hopes and sorrows into these ancient cracks, trusting that their words, pressed into the stone of such a holy place, might somehow ascend more directly to the ears of the divine. The papers flutter slightly in the breeze, a whispered conversation between human longing and eternal presence. As you kneel there, breathing in rhythm with the prayers around you, you become aware of the layers of sensation that define this moment. The smell of stone, dry, mineral, timeless, mingles with the scent of burning oil from the lanterns. There is also the faint sweetness of night-flowering jasmine from somewhere in the Jewish quarter behind you, and the clean, cool smell of the evening air itself. The sounds create their own complex texture. The prayers in Hebrew, some chanted, some whispered, the soft rustle of fabric as people shift position, the distant call to prayer from a minaret in another quarter of the old city, a reminder of the religious tapestry that defines Jerusalem, the occasional cry of a night bird, the wind moving through the narrow streets and across the open plaza. The temperature is dropping as the night deepens and you feel it on your skin, that particular quality of desert air after sunset, when the heat of the day dissipates rapidly and a penetrating coolness takes its place. Some of the worshippers have pulled shawls more tightly around their shoulders. Others seem not to notice, so absorbed are they in their prayers. The flickering lantern light creates an intimate warmth that seems to hold back the chill, at least visually if not physically. A group of men begins to sing, their voices rising in a melody that is at once mournful and uplifting. It is a traditional liturgical chant, one that has been sung in synagogues for centuries, but here, in this open-air sanctuary beneath the stars and before the Kotel, it takes on an added dimension of beauty and longing. Other voices join in, creating harmonies that resonate off the stone walls surrounding the plaza. The song speaks of Jerusalem, of return, of restoration, of the unbreakable covenant between the divine and the people. Even if you do not understand the words, the emotion is unmistakable. It speaks of exile and homecoming, of suffering and hope, of a relationship with the sacred that transcends time and circumstance. As the song fades, the murmur of individual prayers reasserts itself, that constant undercurrent of devotion. You notice how the light from the lanterns creates halos around the heads of those nearest to them, as if each person is crowned with a nimbus of gold. The effect is achingly beautiful, transforming the ordinary into the transcendent, revealing the sacred potential in every human soul bent in prayer. To your left, a father kneels with his young son beside him. The boy, perhaps 7 or 8 years old, mimics his father's posture, his small hands folded, his eyes squeezed shut in concentration. The father's hand rests gently on the child's shoulder, a gesture of guidance and connection. In this simple tableau, you see the transmission of faith across generations, the ancient imperative to remember, to teach, to pass on the stories and practices that define a people's relationship with the divine. The boy will carry this memory forward, this night of lanterns and prayers, and perhaps one day he will kneel here with his own child, continuing the unbroken chain. The Western Wall Plaza is not a naturally occurring space. It was created through excavation and clearing after the Six-Day War in 1967, when access to the wall became available after 19 years during which it had been inaccessible. Before that, the wall stood in a narrow alley, crowded and barely accessible. Now, the plaza allows for gatherings like tonight's vigil, for the collective expression of faith that fills the space with such palpable spiritual energy. The stones beneath you have witnessed celebrations of Jewish holidays, bar and bat mitzvah ceremonies, personal moments of profound prayer, and communal vigils like this one, each event adding to the accumulated holiness of the place. Behind you, the old city rises in tiers of stone buildings, their windows beginning to glow with interior lights as families settle in for the evening. The architecture is layered and complex, centuries of construction and reconstruction creating a vertical history. Domes and minarets punctuate the skyline, along with church towers and the distinctive shapes of synagogues. This is a city that refuses simple categorization, a place where multiple narratives coexist, sometimes peacefully, sometimes tensely, but always intensely. The breeze strengthens momentarily, and the lantern flames bend low, nearly guttering before recovering and burning more brightly than before. The effect is dramatic. Shadows leap and stretch across the plaza, and the faces of the worshippers are momentarily thrown into sharp relief, revealing the intensity of their concentration, the depth of their engagement with the sacred. One woman has her hands raised, palms upward, in a gesture of receiving and offering simultaneously. Her face is tilted toward the wall, and even from where you kneel, you can see the tracks of tears on her cheeks, glinting in the lantern light. Prayer at the Western Wall is understood to be particularly powerful because of the proximity to what was once the Holy of Holies. In Jewish mystical tradition, this is a place where the barrier between the physical and spiritual realms is especially thin, where prayers ascend more directly. The Hebrew name for the wall, Kotel HaMa'aravi, means the Western Wall, but it is also sometimes called the Wailing Wall, a name given by observers who witnessed the intense grief and lamentation that Jews expressed here, especially on the anniversary of the temple's destruction. But tonight is not a night of wailing, it is a night of vigil, of steadfast hope, of collective witnessing to faith that endures. A rabbi moves slowly through the kneeling crowd, pausing occasionally to offer a quiet word of encouragement or to place a gentle hand on a bowed head. He carries himself with a combination of authority and humility, clearly a spiritual leader but also a fellow seeker. His presence seems to deepen the sense of community in the plaza. This is not merely a collection of individuals praying in proximity, but a congregation, a gathering of souls united in purpose and faith. The lanterns continue to burn, their light unwavering despite the breeze. Someone has placed them carefully throughout the plaza, ensuring that no area is left in complete darkness, that the glow reaches every corner where someone might kneel to pray. The effect is to create a sanctuary of light in the midst of the surrounding darkness, a visual metaphor for the role of faith itself. Illumination in times of shadow, warmth in seasons of cold, guidance when the path ahead is unclear. As you remain kneeling, you feel your own breathing slow and deepen, falling into rhythm with the prayers around you. There is something profoundly calming about being part of this collective act of devotion, about surrendering individual anxieties and joining in something larger than oneself. The stone beneath you, the wall before you, the prayers surrounding you, the lanterns blazing in the night, all of it combines to create a moment that feels suspended outside of ordinary time, a glimpse of the eternal within the temporal. The Western Wall is approximately 57 feet high at its tallest exposed section, though much more of the wall extends below ground level and above, behind subsequent construction. The stones in the lower courses are particularly massive, some measuring over 40 feet in length and weighing more than 500 tons. How such stones were quarried, transported, and lifted into place remains a subject of scholarly study and wonder. Standing before them, or kneeling as you are now, it is impossible not to feel a sense of awe at the engineering achievement, but more than that, at the devotion that inspired such monumental effort. The temple that once stood here was not simply a building. It was understood to be the dwelling place of God on earth, the point where heaven and earth met. Its destruction was not merely a political or military defeat but a spiritual catastrophe, the loss of the visible center of the relationship between the divine and the people. Yet the faith did not die with the temple. Instead, it adapted, survived, and found new expressions. The synagogue became a portable temple, prayer became the substitute for sacrifice, and the Jewish people learned to carry their faith with them wherever they went. The Western Wall stands as a reminder of what was, but also as a symbol of what endures, the indestructible core of faith that no empire could demolish. A young woman approaches the wall itself, moving carefully through the kneeling worshippers in the women's section. She carries a small folded paper in her hand, her prayer, written in private, brought here to be offered in this holy place. When she reaches the wall, she presses her forehead against the cool limestone, her lips moving in prayer. Then, with great care, she finds a crevice between two stones and tucks her prayer inside, adding her voice to the millions that have come before. She stands there for a long moment, her palm flat against the stone, as if she might feel the heartbeat of something ancient and eternal pulsing within. When she finally steps back, there is a look of peace on her face, a subtle relaxation of the tension that had drawn her features tight. The practice of touching the wall is nearly universal among those who visit. There is something deeply human about the need for physical contact with the sacred, to close the gap between the abstract and the tangible, to feel the divine not just in the heart or mind but through the skin. The stones of the Kotel have been touched by countless millions, fingers tracing the mortar lines, palms pressed flat in supplication, foreheads resting against the cool surface. Over the centuries, this has polished certain sections of the stone, creating smooth patches that catch the light differently than the rougher, less accessible areas. The vigil continues, unhurried and patient. There is no set duration, no announced end time. People will pray for as long as they feel called to do so, some for a few minutes, others for hours. The lanterns have enough oil to burn through the night if necessary, their flames a constant presence, a fixed point in the darkness. The city around the plaza gradually quiets as the hour grows later. The shops in the surrounding quarters close their shutters, conversations fade, and the sounds of daily life give way to the sounds of prayer and wind and flame. You become aware of the stars above, more visible now that your eyes have adjusted to the lantern light and the absence of brighter modern illumination in the immediate plaza. The sky over Jerusalem is scattered with points of light, the same stars that shone over this city when the temple still stood, when Roman legions camped in the valleys around it, when Crusaders and Mamluks and Ottomans ruled in succession. The stars are witnesses to all of it, unchanging observers of human history unfolding far below. Looking up at them while kneeling in the plaza, you feel the simultaneous vastness and intimacy of the cosmos, infinite space containing this one specific sacred place. A child begins to cry softly, tired perhaps, or overwhelmed by the intensity of the atmosphere. Her mother lifts her gently, cradling her and swaying slightly, whispering comfort. The child quiets, her small face pressed against her mother's shoulder, her eyes wide as she watches the lantern flames dance. Even in her weariness, she is absorbing this moment, storing it somewhere deep where childhood memories reside and shape the adult she will become. The men's section erupts briefly into song again, a different melody this time, more joyous, more celebratory. It speaks of gratitude, of recognizing blessings, of affirming faith despite hardship. Hands clap in rhythm, and some of the worshippers sway as they sing, their movements creating a gentle wave of motion across the kneeling crowd. The song builds to a climax, voices rising together in a shout of affirmation, and then gradually subsides back into the quieter murmur of individual prayer. The emotional arc of the vigil is shaped by these moments, waves of intensity followed by periods of calm, collective expression alternating with personal intimacy. Jerusalem at night is a city transformed. The harsh realities that define it in daylight, political tensions, security concerns, the complex and often painful coexistence of competing claims and narratives, fade somewhat in the darkness, allowing the deeper, older truth of the city to emerge. This is a place made holy by millennia of prayer, by the weight of human longing directed toward the divine. Whatever the conflicts and complications, whatever the headlines and geopolitics, the fact remains that for billions of people across the world and throughout history, Jerusalem represents something transcendent, a geographical point where the earth reaches up toward heaven and heaven bends down to touch the earth. The lanterns blaze on, their light reflecting in the eyes of the worshippers, creating points of brightness in faces otherwise shadowed. There is something primal and powerful about fire as a source of light. Unlike the steady, predictable glow of electric bulbs, flame is alive, responsive to its environment, never quite the same from one moment to the next. The lanterns tonight feel like offerings in themselves, their light a form of prayer, their warmth a kind of blessing. An older man near you struggles to rise from his kneeling position, his joints stiff, his movements slow. A younger man immediately steps forward to help, offering his arm for support. The older man accepts with a nod of gratitude, and together they make their way toward the wall itself. There is something beautiful in this simple act of assistance, this recognition of common humanity and mutual care. The vigil is not only about individual relationship with the divine, it is also about the bonds between people, the ways in which faith communities sustain their members through acts of kindness and solidarity. When they reach the wall, the older man places both hands against the stone and leans forward, his forehead coming to rest between his hands. His lips move in prayer and his body trembles slightly, whether from age, emotion, or the chill of the night, it is impossible to say. The younger man stands beside him, respectfully silent, his own hand also touching the wall. They remain this way for several minutes, two generations connected by faith and stone, their prayers ascending together. The Western Wall is not the only sacred site in Jerusalem, nor is this the only night of vigil and prayer the city has known. But tonight, in this moment, under these stars, with these lanterns blazing and these people kneeling, something particular and precious is happening. It is impossible to quantify or fully capture. The intersection of place and time and collective spiritual yearning creates an atmosphere that can only be experienced, not described. And yet the attempt to describe it, to bear witness to it, feels important, because in a world that often seems fragmented and faithless, there is value in documenting these moments when people gather to express their deepest beliefs, their highest hopes, their most profound connections to something greater than themselves. The prayers continue, endless and patient, a river of words flowing toward the source of all being. Some prayers are formulaic, drawn from liturgy and tradition, their phrases polished smooth by centuries of repetition. Others are improvised, raw, urgent, the spontaneous cry of the heart that finds no adequate expression in established forms. Both kinds of prayer are valid, both are offered with sincerity, both rise like smoke from the lanterns into the night sky. You realize that you have been kneeling for a long time now and your knees ache from the hard stone. But there is a rightness to the discomfort, a way in which the physical difficulty mirrors and validates the spiritual effort. Prayer at its deepest is not easy or comfortable. It requires vulnerability, humility, the willingness to acknowledge need and limitation. The stones beneath you and before you embody this truth. They are hard, unyielding, demanding, yet they have stood for 2 millennia, outlasting everything that has been thrown against them. There is a lesson in their persistence, in their refusal to crumble despite siege and fire and the simple erosion of time. The lanterns begin to burn lower, their oil depleting as the night progresses. But even as some flames gutter and dim, others seem to burn more brightly as if compensating, ensuring that the light is not extinguished. Volunteers move quietly through the crowd, carrying vessels of oil to refill the lanterns, maintaining the illumination. Their service is performed with reverence and care, understanding that they are tending not just lamps but symbols, keeping alive the light that represents hope and faith. A sudden gust of wind sweeps across the plaza, stronger than before, and several of the lanterns do go out, their flames snuffed in an instant. There is a moment of heightened darkness, and then matches flare, and the lanterns are relit, their flames reborn. The momentary loss and restoration of light feels symbolic. Life consists of both, the alternation between darkness and illumination, despair and hope, loss and renewal. The vigil acknowledges this truth, accepting that faith is not a steady state but a continual choice, a flame that must be tended and protected but that can always be relit. More people have arrived, drawn by word of the vigil or perhaps by simple chance, finding themselves in the old city tonight and seeing the glow from the plaza, following the light to its source. They join the kneeling crowds, finding spaces among those already assembled, adding their voices to the collective prayer. The gathering grows, the plaza filling with bodies and souls united in this moment of devotion. The wall itself seems to glow more intensely as the night deepens, as if the limestone is storing the lantern light and radiating it back. The massive stones take on an almost golden hue, warm and inviting despite their solidity. Every crack and crevice, every irregularity in the surface is highlighted by the flickering flames, creating a landscape of texture and shadow across the wall's face. It is simultaneously a wall, a barrier, a remnant, a ruin, and a doorway, a threshold, a point of access to the divine. The Temple Mount rises behind and above the western wall, its platform holding the dome of the rock with its golden cupola and intricate tilework, and the Al-Aqsa Mosque with its silver dome. In daylight, these structures are clearly visible from the plaza, a reminder of the layered sanctity of this location. Tonight, in darkness, they are more sensed than seen, shapes against the stars, presences felt rather than observed. The entire area is sacred ground, holy to multiple faiths, each with its own narratives and practices, each with its own claim to connection with the divine. The vigil tonight is specifically Jewish in expression, but it unfolds in a context of shared sacred geography, in a city that refuses to belong to any one tradition alone. A woman approaches the wall carrying a prayer shawl that clearly belongs to someone else, larger, more worn, perhaps her husband's or father's. She drapes it over her shoulders despite traditional gender associations, wrapping herself in its fabric as she prays. Her act is both personal and representative, taking on the prayer of another, carrying their petition along with her own, recognizing that prayer is not always solitary but often communal, even vicarious. We pray for those who cannot, we carry the hopes of others when their strength fails. The vigil is not organized by any official body or religious authority, though surely some have helped coordinate the lanterns and ensure the space is accessible. Instead, it emerges organically from the collective desire to mark this night, this place, this moment with prayer and presence. There is no program, no printed order of service, no designated leader directing the flow. The vigil creates itself through the participation of those who come, each person contributing their own prayer, their own presence, their own small flame to the larger illumination. As you remain kneeling, you notice details you had missed earlier, the way the stones of the plaza itself vary in color and texture, some smooth and pale, others rough and darkened. The patterns created by the joints between stones, lines that create geometric rhythms across the ground, the occasional piece of paper that has escaped from the crevices in the wall, tumbling across the plaza in the wind like a prayer in flight, seeking its own path toward heaven. The concept of sacred space is complex and varied across religious traditions, but certain elements are nearly universal. The recognition that some locations bear a particular charge of holiness, that the divine is more accessible or more present in certain places, that physical geography and spiritual reality can intersect in specific coordinates. The Western Wall represents such a place for Jewish tradition, but the phenomenon extends far beyond. Mecca and Medina for Muslims, the Church of the Holy Sepulchre and other pilgrimage sites for Christians, the Ganges River for Hindus, Bodh Gaya for Buddhists. Humanity has always marked certain locations as sacred, investing them with meaning and devotion, creating through prayer and practice the very holiness they come seeking. Tonight at the Western Wall, that process is visible and tangible. The holiness is not an abstraction. It is embodied in the kneeling figures, the whispered prayers, the blazing lanterns, the tears and smiles and moments of transcendence that flicker across faces in the crowd. Sanctity is created and recreated in every generation through acts of devotion, through the choice to recognize and honor the sacred, through the willingness to kneel on hard stone and pour out one's heart toward the infinite. The rhythm of the vigil is like breathing, expansion and contraction, sound and silence, movement and stillness. There are moments of intensity when song rises or many voices pray aloud simultaneously, creating a surge of spiritual energy that is almost palpable. These are followed by quieter periods when individual prayers dominate, when the plaza fills with murmurs and whispers and the soft rustle of pages turning in prayer books. Neither state is better or more authentic. Both are necessary, both are expressions of the fullness of human engagement with the divine. A group of visitors stands at the edge of the plaza, clearly not participants in the vigil but respectful observers. They watch in silence, their faces showing a mixture of curiosity and reverence. One raises a camera then lowers it again, apparently thinking better of photographing this moment. There is wisdom in that restraint. Some experiences are diminished by the attempt to capture them. Some moments are best honored by presence alone, by simply witnessing and allowing the experience to imprint itself on memory without the mediation of a lens. The lantern light catches on the metallic threads in some of the prayer shawls, creating small constellations of sparkle among the worshippers. These garments, talith in Hebrew, are traditionally worn during prayer, particularly morning prayers, though some wear them in evening worship as well. They are fringed at the corners as prescribed in Scripture, the fringes serving as reminders of divine commandments, physical prompts for spiritual awareness. Tonight, wrapped around shoulders against the chill, they serve dual purpose, practical warmth and sacred symbol, the material and spiritual functions unified. As the vigil continues past midnight, you feel a shift in the atmosphere, a deepening, perhaps, or a clarification. The initial arrivals and greetings are long past, the settling in is complete, and now there is only the core activity of prayer, sustained and sincere. Those who remain have committed to being here, to kneeling through discomfort, to praying through tiredness, to maintaining the vigil regardless of difficulty. This perseverance is itself a form of prayer, an offering of time and effort and presence. The Western Wall has witnessed countless such vigils over the decades since the plaza was created, and in the narrow alley before that, and in imagination during the centuries when access was denied. Jews around the world, unable to reach Jerusalem, turned toward it in prayer, their hearts traveling the distance their bodies could not. The memory of exile and the hope of return have shaped Jewish consciousness and prayer life for millennia, making Jerusalem not just a place but an idea, a promise, a persistent dream that has outlasted empires and survived attempts at erasure. Tonight, those who kneel in the plaza embody the fulfillment of that ancient longing, the ability to physically be here, to touch these stones, to pray in this place. The emotional weight of that reality should not be underestimated. For many, kneeling here is the realization of a lifetime's hope, the answer to generations of yearning. The tears that fall tonight are not only personal but historical, carrying the grief and joy of ancestors who dreamed of this moment but never lived to see it. A phone rings somewhere in the crowd, its electronic trill jarring in the sacred atmosphere. The owner fumbles to silence it, apologetic, and the interruption passes. But it serves as a reminder that this vigil, however transcendent it may feel, exists in the contemporary world, in a time of technology and connectivity, of complex geopolitics and modern life. The ancient stones stand in conversation with smartphones, the eternal and the immediate existing side by side. Perhaps there is something appropriate in that juxtaposition. Faith has always existed in specific historical moments, responding to the particular challenges and opportunities of each era while maintaining continuity with tradition. The lanterns continue their steady burning, and you realize that they have become markers of time, their diminishing oil a kind of hourglass measuring the passage of the night. Some are nearly depleted, their flames small and weak. Others, more recently filled, burn strong and high. Together they create a varied landscape of light, no two flames quite the same, yet all contributing to the illumination that transforms the plaza into a sanctuary. You close your eyes for a moment, allowing the sounds to wash over you without the distraction of sight. The prayers in Hebrew, the occasional cough or shuffle, the wind moving through the plaza, the distant sounds of the city beyond. With your eyes closed, you might be in almost any era. The auditory landscape of prayer and wind and stone is timeless, unchanged across centuries. This is what the ancients heard, what future generations will hear. In this moment, temporal boundaries dissolve, and you are connected backward and forward through time to all who have prayed here and all who will. When you open your eyes again, the sight of the wall and the lanterns and the kneeling crowd has not changed, yet it feels renewed, seen with fresh perception. There is beauty here, not the refined beauty of art or the pleasant beauty of nature, but something rawer and more profound, the beauty of human souls engaged with ultimate questions, of collective yearning given physical form, of light persisting in darkness. An elderly woman is helped to her feet by two younger attendants, clearly ready to leave after hours of prayer. Her face shows the exhaustion of age and effort, but also a deep peace, a satisfaction that suggests her prayers have been offered and received. She turns to look at the wall one last time before departing, her gaze lingering, memorizing perhaps, storing the image against future need. Then she nods slightly as if in conversation with the stones themselves, and allows herself to be guided away toward the exits. New arrivals continue to come even at this late hour, night workers finishing shifts, perhaps, or those who prefer the quieter atmosphere of small hours prayer, or simply insomniacs seeking solace. Each finds a place among the crowd, kneels and begins to pray, adding their voice to the ongoing chorus. The vigil thus has no clear beginning or end but is rather a continuous stream, individuals flowing in and out while the collective act persists. The relationship between individual and community in prayer is always interesting to consider. How private devotion is enriched by corporate expression, how personal needs are held within larger frameworks of shared faith. Tonight, each person prays their own specific prayers, for health, for loved ones, for guidance, for forgiveness, for strength, for peace. Yet by praying together, in proximity, in this shared sacred space, those individual petitions become part of something larger, a collective appeal that carries more weight than any single voice alone. The stars have wheeled overhead as the night has progressed, their positions shifted in the sky, marking the passage of hours. The moon, which had not yet risen when the vigil began, now hangs in the sky, adding its cool silver light to the warm gold of the lanterns. The combined illumination, flame and moonlight, gives the scene an ethereal quality, as if the vigil is occurring in a liminal space between earthly and heavenly realms. You become aware that your own prayer, silent and unformed until now, is beginning to take shape. Not words exactly, but a sense of yearning, a reaching toward something beyond articulation. This is perhaps the truest prayer, not the recitation of formulas however beautiful, but the raw exposure of the soul, the acknowledgement of need and limitation, the opening of oneself to possibility and grace. The vigil has created space for this, has held and protected this vulnerability, allowing you to lower your defenses and simply be present to whatever might come. The Western Wall rises before you, massive and enduring, and you understand in this moment why people have traveled thousands of miles to stand here, why prayers are directed toward this specific location, why these particular stones matter so much. It is not superstition or simple tradition. It is the recognition that the sacred needs anchors, that faith benefits from tangible touchpoints, that the human heart requires more than abstraction. We need to be able to say, here is where heaven and earth meet, here is where prayers are heard, here is the threshold between the ordinary and the divine. As the first hint of dawn begins to pale the eastern sky, imperceptible at first, then gradually undeniable, the vigil enters its final phase. Some of the lanterns have burned out, their oil exhausted, but enough remain to maintain the sacred atmosphere. The prayers continue, perhaps with added urgency now that the night is ending, or perhaps with a gentleness that comes from hours of sustained devotion. The crowd has thinned somewhat, but dozens remain committed to seeing the vigil through to daybreak. The transition from night to day at the Western Wall is a phenomenon worth witnessing. As the sky lightens, the limestone begins to reveal its true colors, the creams and golds and subtle pinks that are obscured in darkness. The wall seems to come alive with the growing light, each stone distinct, the texture and history visible in new ways. The lanterns, which dominated the visual field in darkness, now become less significant, their flames pale against the strengthening daylight. Birds begin to call from the rooftops of the surrounding buildings, their songs greeting the new day. Pigeons flutter down into the plaza, searching for crumbs, indifferent to the sacred activity around them. The mundane and the holy coexist as they always have, neither canceling the other but rather creating the full texture of existence. A small group begins to sing the morning prayers, Shasharit, their voices fresh despite the sleepless night. Others join in, and the vigil transforms seamlessly into morning worship. There was no announced end to the vigil, no formal conclusion, but rather this organic transition into the rhythms of the new day. The prayers change, the melodies shift, but the fundamental activity continues, human voices addressing the divine, seeking connection, offering praise and petition and gratitude. You rise finally from your kneeling position, joints stiff and protesting, but heart strangely lightened. The night has left its mark on you, the image of lanterns blazing, of crowds kneeling in unified devotion, of ancient stones bearing witness to contemporary prayer. You will carry this experience forward, and it will inform your understanding of faith, of community, of the human capacity for transcendence. As you make your way toward the exit, you pause to look back one last time at the Western Wall, now fully illuminated by morning light. The lanterns that remain lit are barely visible, their flames translucent in the daylight. But their work is done. They have held the darkness at bay, they have provided light for prayer through the long night hours, they have been the physical manifestation of hope and devotion. As they are extinguished one by the attendants who tended them through the night, there is no sense of loss, because the sun has risen, and a new day has begun, carrying forward the prayers that were offered in darkness. The vigil at the Western Wall is over, and yet it continues, in the hearts of those who participated, in the prayers written on paper and tucked between ancient stones, in the memories that will be carried far from Jerusalem to communities around the world. The stones remain, as they have for 2 millennia, patient and enduring, ready to receive the prayers of the next visitor, the next vigil, the next generation of seekers who will come to this place looking for connection with something greater than themselves. And in this way, the vigil that happened tonight in Jerusalem is both unique and eternal, both a specific historical event and a recurring pattern, both deeply personal and profoundly universal. The lanterns have blazed, the crowds have knelt, the prayers have ascended, and the wall stands witness to it all, silent and eloquent, bearing the weight of history and hope with equal grace. If this journey into the heart of Jerusalem has touched you, if the light of these lanterns has illuminated something within your own spirit, I invite you to subscribe to our channel. By joining us, you become part of a community that seeks to witness and honor the sacred wherever it appears in our world. Your subscription ensures we can continue bringing these moments of profound beauty and faith to light. Thank you for standing with us at the Western Wall tonight, for kneeling in prayer, for being present to the holy. Until we meet again in another sacred space, may you carry the light of this vigil with you.